Anybody recognize this building? Leaning Tower of Pisa, that's right. You've all seen this before. It's a pretty remarkable building. It's a very recognizable building, and it's famous for what? For leaning. That's what makes it famous. It wouldn't be very interesting if it wasn't leaning. You may not realize that the Leaning Tower of Pisa is actually part of a larger cathedral complex. It was designed specifically for the church to use to call people to worship. It's a bell tower. The entire complex was built in the beginning in the 1300s in Italy. The whole thing is the people of the city of Pisa bringing forth their offerings, not only of material items, but also their talents. The stonemasons, and the carpenters, and the glass workers, and all the people of the village, as an act of worship, building this cathedral as an expression of their devotion for God, as an expression of their appreciation for the beauty that God had built into the world around them. And the church was designed to serve not only as a place of worship, but an expression of worship. All of this was built for the glory of God. The cross-shaped building is the actual cathedral itself. This is where the people would meet. The circular building in the lower left has one purpose and one purpose only. It's a giant baptistry. The building was specifically used for baptisms. And then at the other end of the spectrum of life, in the top, is basically the graveyard. That large rectangular building is where the dead were laid to rest. And you can see in the lower right, and it's apparent how much it's leaning even from overhead, the bell tower, where the bells were rung to call people to worship. That's the building you know as the Leaning Tower. A couple other pictures from different perspectives, just to give you a sense of why it's so majestic and why it's so beautiful. Now keep in mind, the Leaning Tower was an expression of worship. It was built by men to express their devotion to God. It's got some issues, which you can take advantage of if you're over there. You can have a little fun with trick photography. You can either knock the thing over or put it back up again. The Leaning Tower has some issues, and in this picture I've shown you, just trying to illustrate, the red rectangle is where the building should be if it was built correctly. The green rectangle is just there to give you a sense of how much it's leaning, how much the overhang is. How did it get this way? Well, a little history. It was first begun in the 1200s, where the first 3 levels were completed, but due to war breaking out in Italy, construction was stopped. The tower now leads to the south, but when it was first built, and even before it got to the height that it is now, with only 3 levels complete, the tower was already leaning, and it began leaning to the north. A couple of 100 years after construction stopped, it resumed again, and over the course of the next half century, the next 4 levels were completed, and the lean evened out, and then shifted back in the other direction. Now it started leaning to the south. Finally, 200 years after it was begun, the last part of the tower, the belfry at the very top, was completed. And because the tower was already leaning, the belfry, where the bells were actually stored, was built at a 1.5 degree angle relative to the rest of the building to give it the top at least the appearance of being straight, even though the bottom wasn't. So the building is actually banana-shaped. So much so that the stairs on one side are 2 steps shorter than the stairs on the other side because it's leaning that much. Over time, the tower continued to lean on an almost imperceptible rate, but about a millimeter every year, which over the course of a few years or a few decades isn't that much. But by 1840, after several centuries, the lean had reached 4 degrees. And in the last century, by 1990, the lean had reached 5.5 degrees, which was so structurally unsound they had to close it. And they had to take corrective measures immediately before the whole thing fell over. The Italian government spent millions of dollars to stabilize the tower. They actually dug a huge pit out from underneath the uphill or up lean side of the tower to create a void that the tower could settle back into. They built a huge system of pulleys and weights to hold it level. They didn't want to straighten it. The leaning tower is not very interesting if it's not leaning. They still wanted it to lean. They just didn't want it to fall over. And by 2001, they stabilized it. They pulled it back up by about 18 inches and stabilized the lean at 4 degrees. All of this work to correct a flaw that was present at the very beginning of the construction of the tower. Pisa has some significant flaws, and one of the first flaws is the fact that the foundation is completely insufficient for a tower this size. It's 185 feet tall and has a foundation only 10 feet deep. It's just completely insufficient. There's no way that the foundation can hold the weight of the tower stable. It also has a fatal flaw in the fact that it is built on sandy soil. It's the ground underneath is composed of rubble. Can't possibly hold its weight. And all of this, of course, brings to mind the words of Jesus when he told us, as you heard in Sunday school when you were young, anyone who listens to my teaching and obeys me is wise, like a person who builds a house on the solid rock. Though the rain comes in torrents and the floodwaters rise and the winds beat against that house, it won't collapse because it is built on rock. But anyone who hears my teaching and ignores it is foolish. Like a person who builds his house on sand. When the rains and the floods come and the wind beats against that house, it will fall with a mighty crash, just like your ministry, just like your life, if it is built on an insufficient foundation and on poor soil. What we're driving at here, and what I want to encourage you to consider as you go through this semester and your remaining time here at Boise Bible College, what all of this is designed to do for you. We are trying to help you build a house that will stand, a house that will last, and a house that is devoted to God and is built correctly. The house I would compare to your ministry, and I would also compare it to your life. Not just what you do in the church, but in all aspects of your life. The house is what we're trying to teach you to build here. Now it's going to be a basic house. It's going to be a starter house. There's still going to be some work to do after you leave here, but we're trying to get the basic parts of that house built. The foundation that we're trying to build for that house, I would liken to two different things. First of all, your education. The things that we're trying to teach you here, not just in what you know, but in what you do. But even more than that, your character, the attitude with which you approach your life and your ministry. The foundation is the interface between the house and the soil that it is built on. It's what holds the two together. And the soil that we're trying to build on here is the Word of God. It's biblical truth. The foundation, your education, that's what all of this is designed to do for you. And pouring concrete is hard, nasty, difficult work that isn't always a lot of fun and isn't very enjoyable when it's going on, but it is absolutely essential for the house to stand. So I want to encourage you to work with us as we are trying to help you build a solid foundation for your life and ministry.